advice would you give somebody who's looking to run this race, or any 100 for that matter, for the very first time?
We're headed up to Southern Oregon this weekend for a race that I'm volunteering in, the Pine to Palm 100. I will be sweeping the course from mile 80 to mile 100. My job will be to ensure that the runners get to the finish line safely and that nobody's left behind. As well, I'll be collecting any trash that may be left inadvertently behind and or collecting any of the course markings.
Yeah, Grouse Gap, go ahead and go direct to Teal Gap.
It's now 8:50 a.m. and I just left Grouse Gap at mile 80 with the last runner just ahead of me. And runners have 34 hours to complete the entire course. And so we have until 4 p.m. to make it to Lithia Park. I just found my first flag. Somewhere during the evening, there was a number of different new wildfire starts, which has presented us with a bit of a smoky atmosphere this morning, obscuring some of the view, but there's a nice view of Mount Ashland. 10:45, we are at mile 90, Weasel Creek Aid Station, which leaves 3 hours and 15 minutes to go 10 miles to the finish.
Waiting around for us.
Better get some cowbell going here.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna just power walk. I'm not gonna. So
I'm doing both.
I will not give you any additional pressure to try to sneak up behind you. Hard Rock 100 clockwise direction this year. Shitting blood and vomiting blood. But the experience was great. I thought I had 1 mile to the finish with about 20 minutes to go. And I started walking. And my pacer said, no, we went about 2.5 miles. We have to keep pushing. And we were arguing. And then a little clearing came out in the woods, or from the trail, and I could see Silverton through the trees like several miles away. I'm like, oh my, we gotta go. And at that point we had 19 minutes. We ran 2 miles in about 19 minutes. And we later found out we were 3.2 miles away. That was the only unofficial finisher. I didn't kiss the rock. I just stood by the rock and pointed to the clock.
Yeah.
And accepted my DNF from Dale. I know, we're talking shop over here. The fastest I've run. Nice sprint. Oh, good seeing you.
Yeah. Well, congrats.
I was happy being kind of in the middle of the back of the pack until she passed me and made me DFL. And so after that, I hung it up, and then Eric and I just kind of strolled in for the last 7 or 8 miles. So that's how my day went.
Well, as I told you before, everyone passed you.
That's right.
So, got a special award here for Chris. Chris has finished this now 10 times. And we don't have many more. We've not done many more, and I don't know either way. But I want to give you this award, and I want to say that this is probably the nicest guy on the trails. I think if you talk about somebody that exudes like the spirit of this community and what we do, the love for the events, the camaraderie, the challenge, everything else, that's you, my man. So, and I appreciate it.
I met a lot of other people that said this was their first 100 this weekend. And I told them this was, in 2012, this was my first 100 I ever did. And I got hooked real quick. It was challenging. I could never figure it out. I always did kind of average, mediocre here. But I loved it. That's why I always kept coming back.
Congrats.
Joining me is Chris Jones, who has quite an ultra-running resume with over 240 races to his name and has completed the Grand Slam of ultra-running, among many other accomplishments, and recently has become a 10-time finisher of the Pine to Palm endurance run. So first off, Chris, congratulations on that, man. That's a huge accomplishment. First question I'd like to ask you about that, though, is what advice would you give somebody who's looking to run this race, or any 100 for that matter, for the very first time?
Yeah, it was great to meet you, Eric. At mile 92, I think, we came in for the last 8 miles or so, Pine to Palm. Kind of lucked out being in last place and you being the sweeper. And we got to share those couple hours together, walking it in.
That was good, man. It's great to meet you.
But advice for first-time Pine to Palm Palmer. This was my first 100-mile trail 100-mile. I did a couple loop races. I did a 1-mile loop and a 2-mile loop earlier that year, and just built up the confidence to go that distance, to go those hours and go overnight and get a little nausea and sleep deprivation and so forth. So that'd be some side advice. I wouldn't say it's necessary, but that made me realize, I know I can do 100 miles. Now let me see if I can do it in a tough mountain 100. So for specifically Pine to Palm, it is a tough race. And I've mentioned it before, but Pine to Palm used to be a hard rock qualifier. It's still a Western States qualifier, but it still has about 20,000 feet of elevation gain and descent. So it's still considered, a very difficult race because it has a lot of climbing in certain sections, and in other sections it has very runnable flat or flattish fire road. You need to actually be good in both areas. You need to be good at your mountain climbing and descent, so your quads and your hamstrings, but you also need to have high leg turnover for the flat sections, and that's where you make up your time. I always recommend that you train on the trails, but you also get in some nice flat long runs, do your 10 or 15, 18-mile long run on a flat surface for the leg turnover. How to stay awake during night with your sleep deprivation, that's something that always gets me. How to manage your food intake. This race does get hot, probably hotter than your average race. It's hot for about 90% of the race, with the exception of Dutchman Peak, where it does get chilly. But other than that, you got to learn how to manage your food intake when it's 95 degrees or so. Get to a high point of about 7,000 feet, and you get a little winded, a little dizzy up there. But other than that, you're going to be going up and down anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 feet on some of the other peaks. It's a beautiful, hard course, and it's been really rewarding doing this for the last 10 years.
That's a huge accomplishment, man. Do you think that there's any particular one section of the race that you think that people often overlook or underestimate?
Yes. The number one DNF spot of Pine to Palm is between mile 28 and a half and 36. Or maybe 42. It's called Stein Butte. It's the hottest part of the race. Most people are going to hit it in the mid-afternoon. There's a lot of exposure up there, and it's going to be a rough patch because running all the way to Seattle Bar, mile 28, so mile 14 through 28 is that nice 14-mile kind of flat downhill fire road I was referring to earlier, where you can really gain some speed, some high leg turnover, make up time. When you're running that fast, you feel the breeze, it feels good. But then all of a sudden you switch into mountain running, and all of a sudden the temperature goes up by probably, 15, 20 degrees. It gets really hot up there. And that's where you're going to see a lot of people suffering. I mean really suffering, like passed out in a bush, just completely dehydrated, some sort of heat-related injury. So that's where... That's the section where you really got to make sure you're on top of your hydration. I ran out of the water there once and paid for it, but I still made it. But I did pay for it for a little bit.
Both times that I've been on course going over that section, that is definitely the section that I think people they don't think that it's only 6 miles, it's only like a couple thousand feet of vert, but as what you said, it's the first part of that heat that hits them. There's a lot of little false summits in there. And it's kind of a relentless little climb getting up to that point. And every time that I've come through that aid station, there's people that just look like this mass carnage. I think people really need to pay attention to making sure that they're going into that with a lot of ice and making sure that they've got ample water, because people do run out of water in that section for sure.
The point is, you're going to overheat. Just get off that ridge, get down to the lake and cool off, recover, and then keep trudging along, It does cool off a little bit towards the evening.
One thing that people often ask is, why people run, particularly those that don't understand, running, or they're not really into it, and they want to know what the reason why is. So I'd like to ask you, what's your reason why?
I was in the Army for 32 years, and I came back from Iraq in 2009, and I had a little anger issue, maybe a little PTSD, I'm not too sure. And I came back, I was drinking a lot, getting in fights, carrying around a gun legally, but I was carrying around a gun and just being stupid, And I realized I hadn't run in about maybe close to a year, maybe it was 8 months or something like that. And I decided to do a half marathon with a company out here called Brazen Racing, and it just completely snapped me back into something I enjoyed again. I'm like, wow, I haven't had that kind of high in a long time. That snapped me out of my funk. And I ended up starting to run a little bit more. Oh, maybe I'll do another half marathon, and another marathon, and so forth. And later on that year, there was this gal. I was getting some physical therapy at the VA. She was telling me about the race called Quad Dipsy, the one I've done 10 times now. And I said, oh, yeah. She's like, yeah, it's an ultra marathon. What exactly is an ultra? I didn't even know what an ultra was. And she explained to me that it was anything longer than a marathon. And I said, oh, well, maybe I could do that. And she quickly poked me in my beer belly and said, you're not ready for that yet. I was like, oh, you bitch. But she was totally right, I was like, I was like this fat, disgruntled vet, I was like your classic vet, like just pissed off and just like, oh, whatever, And so after that, I called the race director, and he didn't respond. His name's John Medinger, and we're still buddies today. But I called him, no response. Then I sent him an email, and he responded to the email saying, look, buddy, I don't support the war, but I support the troops. You're in. I'll pay for your entry. Start training. I'm like, all right, great. And I didn't know how to train, but I did what I did what I could. Ended up running that Quad Dipsy race in 2010, and I finished right in the middle. Right 100th place out of 200 people, so it was like right where I should have been. And I'm like, all right, I did it. I ran an ultra, and that's kind of what got me on my start. I'm like, oh, that was, what else can I do? Maybe I can do a 50K. Maybe I can do a 50 mile. It kind of builds from there. I got kind of addicted to the high, and I kept going, and that led to, doing 100 milers. And then you learn, oh, I can do this slam, or I can do a 200s, back to back or whatever. There's different, challenges out there. So I enjoy the challenge just to see if I can finish. Yeah.
Well, right on, man. Thanks for taking a few minutes to chat with me. And again, congratulations on a huge accomplishment, and good luck in your next race, which I understand is coming up here in about a week, right? Bear 100?
Yeah, about 8 days or so, or 9 days.
Best of luck to you.
Yeah, we finally got to connect on this thing.
I know. Technology, it's amazing, isn't it?